So after the third session, we have the fourth plenary now on global stewardship codes and reporting behavior on responsible investment. We have our speakers with us. First up, it's an honor to introduce Mr. Saad Maniar, Senior Partner, Cromac UAE. Mr. Saad Maniar is a distinguished professional in the financial services industry, serving as a senior partner and board member at Cromac. He leads the firm's practice at the Dubai International Financial Center, DIFC, where he has been instrumental in driving the exponential growth and market leadership of their financial services division. Mr. Maniar's deep specialization and strategic vision have been pivotal in positioning the practice as a leader within the region. In his leadership role, Mr. Maniar oversees the overall management of the practice, focusing on key areas such as audit and insolvency. He emphasizes innovation, technology, and risk management to ensure the practice remains at the forefront of the industry trends. Additionally, he plays a critical role in governance, risk, and compliance practices for Cromac's network across the Middle East and Africa region. With nearly 3 decades of experience in the Gulf region, Mr. Maniar possesses a profound understanding of the UAE business community. His thought leadership is widely recognized, with his insights on business and strategy frequently featured in prominent print media. He is particularly passionate about upholding ethics, quality, innovation in a business landscape that often favors a copy and paste approach. Mr. Maniar also serves as the chairman of the Members Advisory Committee of ICSI, where he advocates for the interest of members, affiliates, and students. His multifaceted role encompasses strategy and business development, maintaining firm-wide quality standards, auditing financial statements, governance, risk and compliance, insolvency, and talent development and management. Through his extensive expertise and commitment to excellence, Mr. Saad Maniar continues to make significant contributions to the financial services industry in the Gulf region. It's an honor to have you, sir. Thank you. Next up, Ms. Samira Fernandez, Chief Sustainability Officer, Century Financial. Samira Fernandez is the Chief Sustainability Officer and Chairwoman of the Dubai Chamber Stockbrokers and Investment Services Businesses Group. With a career spanning over 2 decades, she has established herself as a leader in integrating sustainable and ethical practices within corporate finance. Samira held key leadership roles at Sun Microsystems, Nokia, Jet Airways, Paris Gallery, and Al Ghurair Investments. In her role as Chief Sustainability Officer, Samira leads the development and implementation of ESG initiatives across all levels of Century Financial's operations. She works closely with the firm's senior management and board to ensure that sustainability is at the core of the company's business strategy. Her efforts are focused on creating long-term value for shareholders while addressing the increasing demands of investors for responsible and sustainable business practices. As the chairwoman of the Dubai Chamber Stockbrokers and Investment Services Business Group, Samira champions the advancement of Dubai as a global hub for ethical financial services. She is also the author of 2 influential books, which were released by the Education Minister of India, further establishing her as a thought leader in her field. Her recognitions include several prestigious awards, such as the Nirbhaya Award and the Chanakya Award from the Indian government, recognizing her bravery and excellence in leadership. Thank you, ma'am, for being here. Okay. CS Subhush Subramaniam will be introducing.
The briefest introduction is I'm a fellow member of the Institute, and that's what is important today. I am an independent director on a few companies, and one of the companies that I'm tagged on with is in the business of sustainability, which is what is a qualification for me to be in front of you. Quickly, let's see what's the extension of what we want to do today, which is basically stewardship and governance. What is stewardship? It's nothing but fulfilling our responsibilities as fiduciaries in meeting our obligations to beneficiaries and clients. I want to demystify the whole thing and make it as simple as possible so that each of us is able to relate with what is stewardship and governance in the structure of investments. Let's also be very clear, governance and stewardship is not any one's responsibility. It's a shared responsibility, company secretaries included, please note. There are 7 principles of stewardship, and I'll quickly list them for you. It's approach, monitoring, reporting, engaging, collaboration, evangelizing, and long-term value. Okay. When we come to approach, we basically have to tell the people that we are dealing with as to how this game is going to be played. And that will be stuff that you incorporate into your shareholders agreement in terms of various things, in terms of do's, don't do's, minority approvals required, etc. And we also incorporate how compensation structures will be. In this approach, we need to develop structures and processes for governance so that we can build on that and get to the stewardship that we are expected to deliver. In terms of monitoring, incidentally, I'm also a chartered accountant, so I must say that what you don't measure, you cannot monitor. And what you monitor, you definitely cannot manage. That's why monitoring is important. And here, when I say monitoring, it assumes that you have already measured it or at least incorporated it in your approach. The requirement here is to develop a methodology to identify companies that need monitoring, which means those that are slipping up from the approach that you started out with. If they are slipping, they need more monitoring. Just like a teacher in a class concentrates more on the toppers so that they can beat the street, and the outliers at the bottom so that you can get better results in terms of success. In monitoring also, you have to be very careful about choosing what and how to monitor. Periodical review and consider the effectiveness of the monitoring process for yourself. In terms of reporting, it's about reporting to the beneficiaries of the shareholders, how you vote, when you vote, why you abstain from voting, either because of conflict or because it's not worth going through the effort of voting because your shareholding is very marginal. We have to be very careful about adopting a tick-the-box approach based on proxy advisors. That's what you need to be very careful about. In terms of engagement, I think it makes tremendous sense for people to voice their concerns about the approach to governance, board composition and independence, board's oversight of strategy as much as risk, and board's approach to executive compensation. This is something that will come in many more discussions as we go along, because everybody says stewardship is about creating long-term value, but I'm yet to see companies that really compensate executives into the long-term benefits. Most of the time, we are compensating for short-term, which is 1 year. Sometimes we had a deferred payout, which means it is a maximum 2nd year. So by engaging, we are able to convince and ensure that some of these things get changed for the better. Collaboration is easier said than done. Collaboration is about working with other investors so that you get critical mass in terms of shareholding and shareholding power, muscle. But there is a lot of conflicts in this. When it comes to collaboration, you will have maybe not collision of objectives, but definitely of timing. If I, as a fund manager, am raising money, I don't want any bad news from my portfolio to come out. Even if I acknowledge it, I don't want it recognized in the P&L or in the balance sheet or in any other disclosure. Whereas if I am coming to invest in the company, looking to invest in the company, I'll be very happy if the bad news hits and the value drops so that I can buy. So collaboration is a very challenging thing from my practice. It's easier said than done. Evangelizing, helping companies to actually change or modify things that are constraining and rules that are in conflict. Very recently, we had this situation of the auditor's appointment in banks having conflicting directions between RBI and MCA. RBI expects that auditor's appointment should be pre-cleared by them for 1 year at a time. MCA says you must appoint them for 5 years. That is when their true independence will come. One proxy firm actually took it upon itself to fight this and advise voting against resolutions either which way, more to force the regulators to change their stance rather than to say anything else. Needless to say, all of this should create long-term value. Understand the risks and opportunities associated with the material sustainability factors and improve awareness of the systemic risks. Having said that, let's try and jump into the strength and power of the team that we have here with us. And we will start with a brief introduction of themselves. I think the way ICSI introduces us is not necessarily the best way we want to be introduced. Good brief introduction, self-introduction, and then we'll start.
Good afternoon, rather good evening, good afternoon. So myself, Ashish Mohan, I'm currently the secretary at the Institute of Company Secretaries of India, New Delhi.
I am Saad Nanya, senior partner at Crow.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Samira Fernandez. I'm wearing 3 hats at the moment. So I'm the CSO and board member of Century Financial. I'm also the chairwoman of the Dubai Chambers Stockbrokers and Investment Services Business Group, which houses over 3,500 companies across the UAE. And finally, I'm here as a very proud representative of CISI with my able counterparts and partners with me, Victoria and Azza. And I'm here on behalf of them to talk about the future of governance on various topics.
We can go for the questions now. And my first question is actually to Ashish. This morning, I don't know how many of you were around, when we had a series of releases. And one of the releases that happened in the aegis of the presence of the chief guest and the president of the ICSI Institute, Mr. Narasimhan, was the stewardship principles. I would like to have Ashish's views on why this, why now? Is it a question of integrating with the world, or is it a question of taking the lead in India?
I think I need to answer in 2 parts there. First of all, the question of or the principle of stewardship now linked with, you say, sustainability as well as corporate governance or ESG for that matter. It is not only just now fascinating, but it has become an essential part of our business. So we having seen this, and we as an institute, we are the world's largest institute of governance professionals. We have approximate more than 75,000 members in India and more than 3 lakh students in our wing. So it is, and India looking at the concept of Viksit Bharat by 2047, that is developed India by 2047, and the SEBI and the capital markets which are looking at India poised to be becoming the 3rd largest economy in some time now. The kind of investments flow which is going to come in the country, we are definitely required to play a very, very proactive role in focusing on sustainable investments in the country. It's not just pure investments, it's about sustainable investment, how the reporting process are taking place. So what we are seeing in the country is that some sort of a professionalism is getting developed within the institutional investors. So kind of a professional stewardship is developing. So that space we need to develop it further, make it more professional framework, and probably that would enable a better reporting system. And the second part to the which I want to comment on is that if you see in these principles which we released today, we are trying to bring out a standard reporting process, which perhaps was missing in, we have so many codes today, so many principles today, but we have tried to bring out a standard reporting format. So as you rightly introduced, something needs to be measured. So how do you measure it? Unless there is some standard reports which are there. So on these 2 accounts, we found it necessary that we should come out with these principles. And I feel that we have brought it up at the right time.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, Ashish. I hope you have not motivated all company secretaries from UAE to leave and go back to India tonight so that we'll have no attendance tomorrow. But it is well presented in terms of the excitement that's happening in India. The next question is possibly to to draw on the experience of both Saad and Samira, how do you see the role of global stewardship codes changing over the next decade? And how should companies like you, practitioners like you, adapt?
Yeah. So, we do not need to look at the future. It's all in the making right now. Have you noticed Tesla? Even though they are in the midst of controversy over and over again, they are still redefining the way they look at transparency and integrating that with ESG principles in every step of the way. Have you noticed BlackRock? We talk about the investment arm. They are investing into companies who deal with sustainable practices. And they've opened the door to a big scheme of ethics on different investing mechanisms where they move forward and they look at the reports of companies. And they also eliminate companies which do not have integrated sustainability reports. Let's not move very far. Nestle, how many of us here consume Nestle products? Almost all of us, right? Can I have a show of hands? All of us. And the beauty of it? We were not aware of some of the issues and the challenges and the practices in the supply chain that Nestle was following. But now, because of the compliance of sustainability and the ESG reporting, this is where we know that we are in the right hands with companies to ensure that everything that they do is monitored right from the very beginning.
Thank you, Samira. Saad?
So just to add to what Samira mentioned, today the need of the hour is that we need to have the harmonized code across the globe. Right? Because you see many different countries have written different codes. UK was the first one to bring up the code. I think it was in 2010. But then Japan and certain other Asian countries, including India, have come up with the code. Now, there is some disparity in the code, which makes it difficult for the global companies to implement and practice those code. So it is important that we bring some harmony amongst the standards. IFRS has done a good job in terms of harmonizing the sustainability standards and bring some element of consistency. However, again, this needs to be seen how the companies adapt to those reporting standards. Another example I would like to quote here is in terms of the sustainability, if you may allow, because there are some people who are coming from India also to attend this conference. In Dubai, when BP spill happened many years back, right? Dubai kind of realized that if we were to survive, if we were to sustain our economy, how we can do that without water, because we survive on desalinating the water from the sea and using it for our day-to-day needs, right? So if something like BP spill were to happen in the UAE or near the UAE coast, it would be a disaster. Right. So what they did is they came up with the risk management plan, and they created the reservoirs, underwater reservoirs, which will allow the Dubai economy to function as normal for 40 days in the event of such disruptions. So such are the futuristic actions which are needed in order to make the make the economy sustainable. And this is the beautiful example, which Dubai has demonstrated. Today, Dubai Water and Electricity Authority, they benchmark themselves with the best in class. So they do not benchmark themselves with that of the Middle East or GCC, but they benchmark with the best in class. And, I have privy to some of the reports, and I can confirm that they are at the leadership position at that level. So for amazing achievements Dubai has achieved, and they continue to do so in a very systematic manner.
Thank you, sir. Samira, a question for you. Now that you raised the thing about learning from the ESG and BRSR, to what extent does disclosure requirements like ESG reporting in BRSR help institutional investors to make decisions? And I ask this in a particular context of being an investor. In investment business, a well-written investment recommendation does not necessarily lead to a good investment outcome. In a similar way, does a well-written BRSR give you the comfort to say that it will be in action as well?
So I think that's a very interesting point that you asked, Subbu. And you know the familiar saying, do not judge a book
By the cover.
by the cover. And I think that's what it is. Sometimes what we have externally might not be practiced within the company itself. And with this, let me give you an example of, a recent disclosure by British Petroleum. So they have taken a conscious shift from what they are doing towards investing in renewable energy. And why are they doing it? For one reason. Because, my friends, it is the investors who are pressurizing the company to take a drastic quantum leap forward. And I think that is what is most important and reflective of all of us sitting here today. The beauty of this topic by ICSI on responsible investments. It doesn't start by having a press release out there. It doesn't start by issuing a mandate. It doesn't start with collaborations only. It starts by walking the talk. And who walks the talk? It starts with us, responsible, entities, professionals who can pave the way towards responsible ethics. I had a chat with Saad little earlier on the day and with Subbu as well. And I was really impressed when he spoke about why ethics should be included in every step of the way. And we were trying to see how we could really align today's topic. But what was the ground reality? It isn't the cover. It is what we practice at each and every day. At Dubai Chambers, we are also hosting the first Global Investment Summit in the month of November. And I invite all of you personally to be part of it. Why? Because you all walk the talk. This is a professional group where you can change, you can transcend boundaries. And I want to give you another example of Google's parent company, Alphabet. How many of you have heard about Alphabet? Show of hands. So do you know what they are doing? Rather than using ChatGPT for information which is just out there, they are all looking at ethical information sourcing and passing it on. And this is the step we all need to play together. Investors putting pressure, the community at large, stakeholders, key stakeholders working together to form a collaborative environment and for all of us to gaining on this for our future generations.
Yes, I'd like to add one or two things to what Samira mentioned. The disclosure requirement is kind of forced onto the companies. Right, it is not coming out from them, which is one thing. So when there is no measurement or no supervision, people tend to just check the box. That's number one. Number two, we live in a very disruptive era where the speed of communication is so fast that what is discussed in the board meeting, people coming out of the board meeting, even before that, the news is in the media and the market. that so-and-so discussion happened and so on. So it is very, very difficult to control what is happening around us. And this brings us to the point of ethics, which Samira mentioned. It is so important that, we as a professional, we all should promote the ethical behavior and the integrity in a way that will allow us to sustain the economic environment that we live in.
Thank you, Saj. I wanted to actually come back to you on the comment on the need for standardizing stewardship and reporting formats. Is it, in your opinion, feasible? Is it necessary? Or is it a must do?
Yeah, it is necessary, I would say. We need to form a global body in order for us to bring in the harmonized, principles or the framework. And once we are able to form such a body, then it becomes easier for the companies to adopt. I think the starting point has to be with the G20, G21 countries. And, once they initiate such a process, then it's a matter of just getting things implemented in those big countries, and the rest of them will just follow. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think even when I was answering your first question itself, I was referring to those reporting formats which we released today. As Saj just rightly said, I think initially these reporting would be voluntary in nature, because we may not be able to put it as a compelling report or for that matter. Slowly the acceptance should start coming in the global society. Maybe perhaps, as you rightly said, G20 could be a option where the group of nations come out with a consolidated format. So more is required from the voluntary nature and how the respective jurisdictions start accepting these kind of reporting structures. So I feel that it would be a gradual process, because if you see, even in the listing agreements across the world, there was a time when just like a concept of diversity in the board, women directors, for example, it was just a recommendation. But today's it has become mandatory in almost many of the jurisdictions. Say a concept of lead director, lead independent director also. So today you see slowly the acceptance has come, and these are forming part of the listing agreement. So I think we need to give some amount of time, and slowly at some point of time, these reports, there would be some kind of unification of these reports coming. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashish. Question to each of you, in your own way, you can respond. What role can each of you or your organizations play in promoting stronger stewardship principles?
So in terms of, I'll just answer this question in two parts. One, we have very strong values. Our values of care, share, invest, and grow. Allows us to do things in a responsible manner. And then the second pillar is a very strong ethical foundation. So these two things put together, makes us or gives us a good governance framework in order for us to develop and grow our business and practice our business in a responsible manner.
So at Century Financial, our focus has shifted from just the foreign markets, the forex markets, to sustainable investments. And why I bring this into context is because we are now collaborating with different experts in the Sustainable Finance Working Group. And we produce a series of research and white papers. So this is one area of collaboration where we can all come together and see through some of the examples, how can we further enhance and improve? That's number one. Secondly, we are also part of the Sustainable Investments Forum, a forum that brings together investments from the GCC region. Mind you, it's not just the UAE, from the GCC region to come together to express their concerns, areas of interest, how to accelerate growth, because this is the future of finance, and see how we can take it forward. And I think third, if you ask me, I would say setting a framework in place, which might not be a global framework, but something that is more localized, something which is the need of the hour based on, different sectors, for example. What might, be of a European standard, the CSRD framework might, for some reasons or many reasons, might not be integrated or be relevant to the UAE to start with. I'm sure India and UAE, we put our minds together, we collaborate. There is so much we can develop. Don't you all agree with me on this? Yes? Can I have a show of hands if you are open for a UAE-India collaboration? Thank you. I'm really honored. I think we should look at collaboration, and I think that could be one of the main takeaways of this conference. It shouldn't be a conference just for us to meet, network, and share ideas, right? It should be an actionable initiative. And this is what the 3,500 companies of the investment sector at Dubai Chambers have committed towards. And just imagine if we can get the ICSI to look at holding hands, joining hands, and collaborating so that next year when we come together, hopefully with the same panel, we have great achievements to share and memories to cherish. So I do hope that we take this collaboration to the next level.
Yeah, I think I would also like to add on there. Definitely, we would take up those suggestions, and collaborative efforts would always be there. From the institute's point of view, if I can say, our role would be a little different, because today itself, we have started off our responsibility in releasing the principles and the voluntary format. We feel that on two aspects, the institute's role would be very important. One is on the advocacy part of it, and second is the toolkit for engagement. So what we are looking at is definitely advocacy. We would be definitely carrying on with a lot of our initiatives with regard to handholding and the kind of the programs and the other, the collaborations with the investors and the upgradation or whatever is required. But on the toolkits in the institute, we have already started working on it, on the engagement toolkits. And I think in a few months' time or in a year's time, I think we would be able to bring out further material on it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one pet peeve, which is aligning long-term compensation of executives. What are the challenges faced in compensation alignment to reflect long-term value creation, either in your portfolio company or in your own company? And you can start with whoever.
I think that relates to both of them.
Ashish says effect of.
I make long-term investment in people.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to share an example because, I'm also an educationist. And for me, it is always companies that show us what to do and what not to do. So I would like to, how many of you here have heard of Wells Fargo? Yeah, Wells Fargo in 2011 was a very different company, my friends. And you know what happened? The employees were pressurized to open accounts. How many of you can resonate with a toxic work culture? There were over 1 million, my friends, 1 million fake accounts opened, only because that the employees were pressurized to do so. And what happened after that? It was an issue of transparency. It was an issue of ethics. The shareholders got involved. The company was under severe pressure to revise their entire corporate governance strategy. Do you remember that? And after that, things have changed. Not so long ago, the Enron case in, I think, 2001 was an ultimate corporate governance failure. There was an accounting fraud by, who were their auditors? Anyone? Arthur Anderson. And what happened to the company? Bankruptcy. What happened to the auditors? Exactly. They vanished away because profits were undetected to the extent that there was a dissolution of the auditor themselves. Not too far away also is the Volkswagen emission scandal. How many of you here remember the Dieselgate scandal? Anyone here? Excellent. What happened? Today we say emissions is a big thing. What happened during the Dieselgate scandal? The software used by one of the world's largest car manufacturer was tampered with. Did the shareholders know about it? Did the stakeholders know about it? Did the public, the consumers know about it? And that led them to a reputation loss, a loss in their trust. And I think trust is such a big asset which cannot be replenished easily. So what we are talking about is when we have examples around us, what is it that we can do, in terms of, you say, compensation of the workers, the employees, the shareholders? It's the compensation at the board. It starts with trust and transparency. And this is something that we have to maintain no matter where we are in the corporate scenario.
Thank you, Samira.
Yeah, it is very difficult and challenging environment that we have, the business environment. And, the compensation is a very kind of tricky matter. And we have to balance between the short-term objectives and the long-term goals. Today, most of the leaders, they are pressurized in such a way to deliver the short-term results. And as a result, we see the compromise in the long-term objectives. And what it happens is that because these leaderships, they deliver 1 or 2 or 3 years of short-term results, and they know that they have accumulated enough problems, then they leave. Right? They leave the organization, and the new person who comes in puts the blame on the previous management, previous leadership, and the cycle continues. Right? So there has to be more accountability in terms of the role the leaders play. And the compensation is a very small portion of it. But then the compensation also has to take into account the contributions they have made to make that their own business sustainable and the overall economy sustainable and the environmental and the climate change sustainable.
Compensation, in one sense, I picked it up because human beings behave the way they are incentivized to behave, assuming all rational human beings though. And with the examples that Samira stated, what comes to my mind is during the dot-com boom and in the last phase of exuberance in investment, what we found as investors is that because profits or cash flows was not the metric that people are investing against, in 2000, it was page views. Web 1.0 valuation was based on number of page views. In the next time, it was number of people who downloaded the app. And then there was GMV. Do you know gross merchandise value? I know companies which did not account for sales returns at all. And they had a very accommodative customer service return policy. You can return, but they will not account for it because their GMV will go down. What will happen if the GMV go down? The valuation goes down. So this is how these things are perpetrated, and it's not just compensation for us. Even entrepreneurs are driven by some stuff where people value. And based on what they are incentivized to do, they do the wrong things also. And we are the people who set those benchmarks and matrices for them. With that, I think we'll conclude. If there are any questions from the audience, we'll take one or two, and then Samira has to catch a flight. I don't assure you an answer.
Right from children, you pick up a certificate, you pick up something. To the instant of quick commerce today, they instantly want to benefits or respect benefits. The largest question is long-term management of
incentives. We are all wired today short term. And today, I think that is what we have been rewarding in the stock market in terms of compensation as companies. Is there going to be really a change? A fundamental question?
I think this is part of human behavior. We have known the marshmallow experiment. We've also known investment, the power of compounding. Even if you buy a lousy stock but hold it for 25 years, you make decent money. At least that's been my experience. Way back in '88, I had applied for a non-resident quota. It used to be 2,500 rupees was the application value. 1,000 rupees for residents and 2,500 for non-residents. I applied for a company called Suraj Diamonds because in NRI quota, you had a higher chance of getting it. 1988-89. 20 years later, I found that certificate and it was worth 2.5 lakh rupees. And Suraj Diamond is not the best in governance or business or accounting or anything. So it's the power of compounding. And I think power of compounding, deferred compensation, all of it, Lakshman, is like God. Blessed are those who believe in him without having seen him.
I completely resonate with you, Subbu. I think good governance is the foundation of success in whatever we do, personally and professionally. And I think that is the only way to be.
One more question. Okay, if you don't have a question, I will go. I'll go with one question. Market practice is usually ahead of regulation. Something happens, then regulator wakes up and says, I need to regulate this, I need to govern this, I put guardrails, etc., etc. Can we think of some examples in our experience, in our region, in GCC, in India, wherever we are working, or in your sphere of influence, where you find any example of some company or entity or business being voluntarily ahead of regulation? If we do know, let's share it and let's celebrate it.
So I think I would just like to add, because we had a session, AI for All, Empowering Responsible Investments. And my example is of the UAE government, the UAE Vision 2031, which talks about integrating AI into every strata of responsible investments. And it is so beautiful that the government is looking at the future of AI today. So we had this session where we had the public and the private sector come together, share some examples, share their strategy, share their vision, and also share platforms for collaboration, sectoral collaboration and cross-country collaboration. And it was so beautiful. If you can Google, you will find us in all the newspapers about AI for All, Empowering Responsible Investments. And I say that because rather than, regulators looking at challenges and then firefighting, here we are looking at the future and then creating a beautiful scenario in place for businesses to thrive and flourish responsibly. So I commend the UAE government for their vision in AI, the AI strategy Vision 2031, which is not too far away, to ensure that we have equity for all right before we start.
Yeah, just very quickly, in terms of the voluntary disclosures and the requirements, we as a firm here, we are not mandatorily required to publish any report, but we do publish the transparency report. And this is the global best practices, and we have kind of adopted it here. So in terms of the details, we every year we keep on improving in terms of transpiring the way in which we responsibly operate our activities.
Great. Stewardship is also about managing conflicts. And Samira having highlighted it, and I can't resist commenting or observing on it. AI for the future is all about managing employment versus loss of employment in the long term. Thank you all. Thank you, Samira. Thank you, Sar. Thank you, Ashish. Thanks for being a wonderful audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you to our esteemed panelists for an insightful session. Some of the key takeaways from this session, the role of institutional investors in responsible investing and being transparent and following stewardship code, the compliance of ESG and sustainability practices, the stressing on the futuristic actions which are important to make the economy sustainable. Benchmarking to the best of the class is also quite impactful. Promoting ethical behavior right from the from the management level is quite important for the company and the economy as a whole. Companies with sustainable business practices are more successful in the long run. Idea is to collaborate and share vision and be committed to responsible investment behavior, monitoring of corporate governance for the interest of not just shareholders, but the largest stakeholders. And lastly, balancing short-term goals with long-term business objectives is important. Life is not about playing test cricket. I heard this from a very famous commentator, Harsha Bhogle, and that resonates with whatever we discussed today. Life is about playing test cricket and not T20 cricket. So and he actually quoted this story of a very a legendary cricketer, Rahul Dravid and Roger Federer. They have failed more than they have succeeded. But what they have achieved is what is important. So it's not about you failing, but it's about how you get up, and what you achieve is more important. And that resonates with sustainable investment as well. You need to play long and not short. Thank you very much for an insightful session. Now I would like to call Mr. Lakshmanan to kindly felicitate our esteemed panelists. Mr. Saad Manyar. Ms. Samira Fernandez. Our very own Mr. Subbu Subramanian.